Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about how time functions in Waiting for Godot. The Irish theater critic Vivian Mercier famously described Godot as a play in which nothing happens twice. Remember our lesson on paradox. A paradox is a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement that, when investigated, may prove to be well-founded or true. Mercier's review is a paradox. Nothing can only happen once. Or maybe never, right? Because if nothing happens,
doesn't that make it something?
and then even if nothing can happen, we certainly wouldn't expect it to be able to happen twice. Mercier is talking about the difference between the two acts of Godot, which I'll return to later. Mercier also said that with Godot, Beckett had achieved a theoretical impossibility, a play in which nothing happens that yet keeps audiences glued to their seats. That should be impossible, because plays are supposed to have action. That's why the director Alfred Hitchcock famously described theater as life with the boring bits cut out. One thing that quote implies is that the writer's medium is not just words but time. So plays don't just have action, they're made of actions. And your experience of time when you read a book or watch a play, as well as the way the characters within that book or play experience time, are integral to the work itself. Plays, books, and poems are made of time, as much as they're made of words, because we're always reading, writing, or watching them within time. So as an author, I can compress decades into a single sentence. I was born, lived for a while, and then died. Or I can write 500 pages describing my experience of brushing my teeth this morning.
I squeezed the tube with excruciating care, leaving a trail of toothpaste lengthwise across the 2,500 bristles of my toothbrush.
We are used to the elastic nature of time in both fiction and life. Everyone knows how a summer day with friends can fly by, while 5 minutes staring at the read receipt of a text can last forever. But Beckett plays with time in a way that might seem very strange and unfamiliar to us. For one thing, what time is in the play seems up for debate. Vladimir is sure that Act 2 takes place the day after Act 1, but all the other characters disagree. Estragon speculates that it might not be Saturday, but Sunday, or maybe Monday, or Friday, or Thursday. Didi and Gogo disagree over whether the sun is rising or setting, and towards the end of Act 2,
Patsu says,
Have you not done tormenting me with your accursed time? When, one day, is that not enough for you? One day he went dumb, one day I went blind, one day we'll go deaf. One day we are born, one day we shall die. The same day, the same second. Is that not enough for you? It is birth astride of a grave. The light gleams an instant, and it's night once more. Oh!
time is, as Einstein put it, a stubbornly persistent illusion, but generally it's an agreed upon illusion. My terribly boring 5 minutes might feel longer than your super fun 5 minutes, but we're using the same clock. We subordinate the relative aspects of time to our need to agree upon a temporal reality so that you can show up to class at 12:15 on Monday and we can get things done. Things can happen. But in Waiting for Godot, nothing happens. Twice. Which brings me to another paradox, in fact to one of the most famous paradoxes of all time, the paradox of Achilles and the tortoise, proposed by the ancient Greek philosopher
Zeno.
So we've got Achilles, ancient Greek hero, is the fastest runner in the world, and we have a tortoise who is not. Let's say Achilles and the tortoise are going to have a race, and Achilles feels bad for the tortoise, and he decides to give the little guy a head start of 100 meters. Suppose that each runner moves at a constant speed, with Achilles' speed, of course, being much faster than the tortoise's. After some finite time, Achilles will have run the 100 meters, bringing him to the tortoise's starting point, but during that time, the tortoise has run ahead, albeit by a much shorter distance, say 2 meters. It will then take Achilles some further time to run that distance, by which point the tortoise will have moved ahead further, and then more time still to reach this third point, while the tortoise moves ahead. Therefore, Achilles can never pass the tortoise because the distance between them is always divisible into a smaller distance, which is always divisible into a smaller distance, which always approaches but never reaches 0. There's an infinite number of distances between Achilles and the tortoise. So think of it this way. To get from A to B, first I need to get to a halfway point. To get to the halfway point, I need to get halfway to the halfway point, halfway to the halfway point, and so on. There are infinite steps to get between A and B. Bada bing, bada boom, motion is impossible, the tortoise wins. But obviously motion is possible. I'm moving right now, and it's common sense that Achilles would beat the tortoise in the race. In fact, that's what Aristotle said to Zeno. Remember that it's from Aristotle, incidentally, that we get the idea of drama being composed of actions. Aristotle thought that Zeno was just ignoring common sense. But knowing that motion, or more broadly change, is possible because it's common sense, because you experience it, is different than being able to explain why change is possible. And to this day, there is debate over whether Zeno's paradox can be resolved mathematically. And in fact, the paradox is used by contemporary quantum physicists to describe the difficulty inherent in measuring motion on the infinitesimally small quantum level, which I'm sure would annoy Aristotle. I'm also sure Beckett would annoy Aristotle in his actionless play in which time is erased and change is impossible. And I thought of Zeno's paradox when I read the famous final lines of the play.
Well, shall we go? Yes, let's go. They do not move.
Why don't they move? Beckett seems to imply that they can't, that in some fundamental bedrock way, change and therefore action is not possible for Didi and Gogo so long as they're waiting for Godot. Nothing happens. But remember, nothing happens twice. Mercier's paradoxical description of the difference between the first and second act. In the Aristotelian tradition, we have conflict, action, and resolution over the course of a play. And Beckett seems to be robbing us of all three. So if there's no resolution, why does the play end where it does? And in fact, you may have gotten the sense that the ending was arbitrary, that this play could have gone on for an infinite number of acts if only we had time to watch them. And that's what Beckett captures. By turning nothing into something, by writing an impossible and paradoxical play, he reflects our experience of the slipperiness of time and the mystery of our movement through it.